Have you ever wanted to play a divine warrior who is capable of calling down thunder to smite his foes and completely destroy the battlefield? Well, if the answer to this question is yes, then you, my friend, are a Tempest Domain Cleric. And today, that is what we are going to build in Daggerheart. So grab your hammer and get ready to wear those rubber gloves because we are going to be using electricity with almost everything we do. My name is Coleman Webb, and this is Limit Break 20, and this is where we build the characters that you want to play in Daggerheart. Storm Tempest Clerics are one of the most powerful cleric subclasses in Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. It has so much flavor and it does a good job of creating this bastion frontline tank that is able to just smite and destroy enemies with thunder and lightning. And that's pretty awesome. And I think a lot of us, when we think about making this character, we think about Thor, right? Kind of iconic, using a hammer, able to throw it, using electricity. It is really just sort of that whole archetype. And so today, what we want to do is we want to build a character that does just that. We want to be able to use a hammer to bludgeon our foes that are right in front of us and then completely eviscerate enemies with lightning. So today, that's what we're going to be building. So let's jump right in. For our starting class, we are going to start Sorcerer. So let's take a look at what some of the things that we get as a Sorcerer right at level 1. So what you'll see is that their domains are Arcana and Midnight, and that their starting evasion is 10, and their starting hit points is 6. Your class item is a Whispering Orb or a family heirloom, which could be a mythical hammer that your family has passed down from generation to generation. Now, if we take a look at their hope feature, it's volatile magic. And what this does is that this allows you to spend 3 hope to reroll any number of your damage die on an attack that deals magic damage. Now, this is nice because a lot of times you will maybe just get that one shot off, or maybe you get that really good spell roll only to be kind of have a lackluster damage output or you roll a bunch of ones, and that's never fun at the table. So being able to spend 3 hope to reroll any of your magical damage is a pretty good feature. Now, one thing that's important is that the hammer we're going to be using doesn't do magic damage. So we are actually going to be using, spoiler alert, a physical damage weapon. So we won't be able to use that feature, at least right now. Next, you get Arcane Sense, where you can sense the presence of magical people and objects within close range. And this is nice. I think that there's a lot of really good use for this. Maybe you've got someone that is using an invisibility spell that's close to you, and maybe you can use this feature to detect them and maybe not have disadvantage in your attack. Those are just some really cool things to use it for, but get creative with this one. Minor Illusion. Now, this is really cool because being a sorcerer, you think of being more of a trickster. I think that that's something that we think about. And if that's the route you want to go with this character, you definitely can. But being able to create illusions is pretty awesome. So let's take a look at what it says. You make a spellcast roll. On a success, you create a minor visual illusion no larger than yourself within close range. The illusion is convincing to anyone at close range or further. So now let's get into another one of their class features, which is Channel Raw Power. So once per long rest, you can place a domain card from your loadout into your vault and choose to either gain a hope equal to the level of the card or enhance a spell that deals damage, gaining a bonus to your damage roll equal to twice the level of this card. So that's a really cool feature. And one of the things I like about it is that if you are going to, let's say, need to use a really powerful attack, you can just basically cannibalize one of your domain cards, put it in your loadout, and just gain that much hope. So I think that that's a really good utility. What I also like about it is if you want to get more damage off of it, you can do that as well. So you can just basically burn that card to double the damage. So you burn a level 5 card, you're going to get 10 damage output. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that you can only hold 6 hope as a character, so you probably don't want to burn your level 7 or 8 cards unless it's maybe something you've already used that's a once per rest, and you can just use that and put it in your loadout. So some things to think about, but remember, you can only have a maximum of 6. Unless you're a ranger and you have a beast companion, then you get an extra one. if you take that upgrade option. For this character, what we wanted to do is we wanted to make you feel like the character archetype that you're playing right from level 1. And I think that's really important when it comes to Daggerheart. There's only 10 levels, so the goal of these builds is to get as close to the archetype as quickly as possible. So in order to meet this criteria, we are going to be taking the Elemental Origin subclass. So let's read about it. Elementalist. Choose one of the following elements at character creation: air, earth, fire, lightning, water. You can shape this element to harmless effects. Additionally, spend a hope and describe how your control over this element helps an action roll you're about to make. Then either gain a +2 bonus to the roll or a +3 bonus to the roll's damage. Okay. This is awesome. What this allows us to do is, more often than not, you spend a hope and add 3 to our damage. And what I really like about this is, even though our weapon that we're planning on taking, spoiler alert, it's a hammer, um, doesn't deal magical damage, this still gives us that flavor and allows us to add that electrical element that also isn't just flavor, it's actually doing more damage as well, which is awesome. Now, the other thing that's nice too is, let's say you get that roll and maybe you roll that 11, right? And you're going, oh, dang, am I close to hitting? You can spend the hope and push that to a 13. So really, really nice that you have multiple uses for this and it's not just one. So for our traits, we are going to be multiple trait dependent, or MTD. Okay, so when we look at our +2, we are going to assign that to our instinct, which is our spellcasting trait. Even though we do have a weapon that's going to involve a different roll than instinct, having a +2 to our instinct is really important because it pushes up the damage for almost all of our abilities, and it adds a +1 for us to hit, which is, again, really important. So for our second trait, we are going to go strength. And this is going to be because the hammer that we are going to be taking is going to have that as the trait that it uses to wield. So having a +1 to strength is going to be sort of necessary for this build. We have one more +1 to assign to a trait. And for us, we are going to have agility. And there's going to be a specific reason why we're going to want to increase our agility up just a little bit at later levels, and I'll go over that when we get there. But really not as important. The primary ones are just instinct and strength for what we're trying to do, but feel free to pick your preference on whichever remaining traits you want. For the -1, we are going to go knowledge. Maybe not very smart and not very charming, but we're going to be fast, strong, and have really good instincts. Now, for our weapon, in case you haven't guessed it, we are going to be taking the Warhammer. So its primary trait is strength, and that's what you're going to be using to wield this Warhammer, which is why we took a +1 there during trait distribution. As you can see, the range is going to be melee, so you have to be up close and personal with this weapon, which is kind of a given. And the damage is going to be a d12 +3. This is one of the hardest hitting weapons at level 1 in Daggerheart. So really nice that we get something that's really powerful. And the burden is two-handed. So what this basically means is that you can equip a shield or a dagger. No offhand weapon, you're just swinging this giant hammer with both hands. So another feature that this has is it's called heavy. So you have to take a -1 to your evasion to use this. So it's going to make us a little bit easier to hit, but the damage output that we're going to have is going to be awesome. And because we do get to pick a second weapon, I would say go ahead and take the Hollowed Axe if this is more your flavor. And again, if you decide you don't want to use the Great Hammer and have that -1 evasion, I totally get that. So I would take the Hollowed Axe. I think that this makes it also is very thematic. It's very similar to the hammer. And what I like about this is that it still uses strength, so we're still going to be good with it. And this is a d8 +1 magic damage. So if you're fighting things that have resistance to physical damage, always nice to have. But we're also a sorcerer, so we can handle that no problem. And we're actually going to be having some additional ways that we're going to be dealing with enemies that have resistance. So stay tuned for that. So we are going to be a frontline warrior who is going to be up in the fray quite a bit. And because of this, we're going to want to try to increase our survivability as much as possible. So for our starting armor, we are going to go chainmail. And if you take a look here, this has a base threshold of 7 before you hit major damage and 15 before you hit severe. And you have a base score of 4 for your armor, which is awesome. It's nice to have that extra armor slot. The one thing about this armor is it does come with a little bit of a penalty. If you take a look here, it has the heavy feature, which is a -1 to our evasion. So yeah, between the weapon and our armor, we're going to be taking a -2 to our evasion. I really did try to convince myself to take full plate armor, but with that extra -2 to evasion and a -1 to agility, which we kind of want to have at least a little bit of a decent agility, I would say that it was just a little steep for my blood. But I think chainmail armor is going to be more than appropriate for what we need to do. And as you move on through different tiers of play, you'll probably find different armor. So unless your DM's a savage, then I'm sorry. Now, as we mentioned at the beginning of the video, the sorcerers get the Arcana and Midnight domain. And so when we look at the domain cards that they have access to, there's really going to be two that kind of stand out to me. So the first one is Rune Word. You have a deeply personal trinket that can be infused with protective magic and held as a word by you or an ally. Describe what it is and why it's important to you. The word's holder can spend a hope to reduce incoming damage by 1d8. If the word die results in 8, the word's power ends after it reduces damage this turn. It can be recharged for free on your next rest. So this is awesome. We can basically spend 1 hope and reduce the incoming damage by, on average, 4.5. So let's say you're fighting an enemy and they roll damage and it's 3, and you do Rune Ward and you roll a 5 or a 6. Well, guess what? That doesn't do damage to you. And maybe your personal trinket is going to be your hammer, and this is going to be something that you can use defensively as well. I think that's awesome. Maybe you're, casting this electric shield around your body as the blade tries to come and hit you. I can just think of all sorts of cool narrative things you're going to be able to do at this at your table. Now, for our second domain card, we are going to take probably one of my favorite level 1 and really sort of kind of sustained magical damage card, and that is going to be Unleash Chaos. So let's take a look at it. At the beginning of a session, you place a number of tokens equal to your spellcast trait on this card. You make a spellcast roll against a target within far range and spend any number of tokens to channel raw energy from within yourself to unleash against them. On a successful roll, you deal a number of d8s equal to the tokens you spent and deal that much magic damage to the target. Mark a stress to replenish this card with tokens up to your spellcast trait. At the end of each session, clear all unspent tokens. Okay, this is awesome. And the reason I love this is because, one, this is going to scale up with you, because you can basically get these tokens that are each going to be 1d10 worth of damage up to your spellcast trait, which when you max that out is going to be 5. And so I really love domain cards that can sort of move up in damage with you. There's some ones that get left behind after you get into tier 2 or tier 3 of gameplay, and this one is just old reliable. Plus, when you get to those higher levels, you can choose how many die you spend, so you don't have to spend all 5. You probably should, but I think it's awesome that you have that flexibility with this card. So this is going to be one that's going to stay with us for a long time. And you can take any spell and reflavor it. I'm trying to keep as much of the electrical theme as possible. I really didn't want to reflavor like flame attacks or anything like that, even though you could. And I think that would be a very viable option if you wanted to do that. However, Unleash Chaos just to me just seems like you are just unloading the magical electricity that runs through your body and just blowing up enemies. And I think that is absolutely awesome and really on point for this character. So when it comes to Ancestry, I spent a lot of time thinking about the different types of builds that we could do with this character. And because we are taking a sorcerer and because we have the primary spellcast trait as Instinct, I felt like this was a really good opportunity just to take a straight Dracona. And there's a couple of reasons why. So let's take a look. So Draconas resemble wingless dragons in humanoid form and possess a powerful elemental breath. That's important. And if you take a look, their top ability is going to be Scales. Your Scales act as natural protection. When you would take severe damage, you can mark a stress and mark 1 fewer hit points. Okay, so I love scales. I think it's one of the best defensive features that you can take. Reason being is because there are domain cards that do this, and this is just like permanently having that domain card that you can use whenever you want, which is absolutely fantastic. But for this build, the real reason we are here is for elemental breath. Let's take a look. You choose an element for your breath, such as electricity, fire, or ice. We're taking electricity. You can use this breath weapon against a target or group of targets within very close range, treating it as an instinct weapon that deals d8 magic damage using your proficiency. So now what we have right from the gate is an AoE electric blast that can hit multiple enemies that scales up with our proficiency. That's awesome. And what I really like is that we could use this weapon, or we can use this ability, and we can then supercharge it with our Elementalist feat and add a +3 to it. So again, a free attack that we get that can hit multiple enemies that we still get to use our subclass feature on. This to me felt like a no-brainer. And while it could be an elemental breath, I feel like that this character would just be emanating this massive like electric spear around him, just taking out enemies that are within that area of effect, which would be just super legit. Man, we're creating the best Thor we possibly can, and I don't think we could have done a better job starting this at level 1. As for the community, I feel like for this character, because we are this Tempest Domain Cleric vibe that we're trying to go with, I felt like Seaborn was actually really appropriate. I know I take it a lot because I think it's the best community, but I felt like thematically this is the best one. And if you take a look here, being part of a Seaborn community means you lived on or near a large body of water. You know the tide. You can sense the ebb and flow of life. When you roll with fear, place a token on this card. You can hold a number of tokens equal to your level. Before you make an action roll, you can spend any number of these tokens to gain a +1 bonus for the roll for each token spent. At the end of each session, clear all unspent tokens. So this is just basically at level 1 adding a free +1 to an attack we can get, which is nice because that could actually save us from hope. Or we could actually use this feature in addition to our Elementalist subclass feature to add a +2 to a roll. So I think you've got some options there. But yeah, this just felt like it was really on theme for the character we're creating. So for experiences for this character, I felt like I always like to have one sort of combat focused feature that you can use to spend a hope on and get a +2 to the roll. And I also like to have one that's maybe a little more social. So the two that we are going to take and create, and again, make your own up if you don't like these. First one is called Hammer Time. And basically, anytime that we try to make an attack using this heavy two-handed hammer, we're going to get a +2 to that attack roll. I think that if you make it really specific to a specific weapon, then that's okay. You just don't want to be like, I'm good with all weapons, right? This is specifically for this character, that being his family heirloom, and this is the thing that he's trained his whole life with, right? Now, the other one is Eye of the Storm. And I feel like that this one I'd probably have to I would use as a sort of social mechanic to where if there was an intense deliberation or someone was hostile and we're trying to diffuse a situation, that Eye of the Storm is just calm and cool and collected and can kind of come in with a steady hand. So those would be the two experiences. Make your own up if you feel that there's something a little bit better that fits your character, but I just felt like these were on point. All right, so let's talk a little bit about tactics for this character. So because we are wearing chainmail armor, as you can see, our evasion is going to be low, 8, very easy to hit. But our major damage threshold is 9 and our severe damage threshold is 17, which is really nice. It's going to take, a little bit of a harder, heavier hit for us to be taking increased damage, which is good. And because we're Dracona, if we do end up taking severe damage, we can mark a stress and reduce that. So that's fantastic. But what's really cool is that we do have 4 armor slots, so you've got a little bit of tankiness to you. And our weapon is going to be a D8, or I'm sorry, our weapon is going to be a D12 +3. So we are going to run into battle and we are going to try to hit an enemy that's around us if we have one. So what we'll do is we're going to, on average, get a 6.5 is what you get on a D12 weapon. And then we're going to add +3, making it 9.5. And if we spend a hope, we add another 3. So that's going to give us 12.5 points of damage on average for our swing when we use this weapon, which is really, really strong. That's very powerful for a level 1 character. Now, if we're in a situation where maybe we're surrounded and we've got some minions or hordes around us and we can hit multiple enemies, well, then what we'll do is we'll use our instinct weapon and use our electric breath, and we can then have that be doing a d8 to multiple enemies, which is 4.5 damage. And if we wanted to, we can add a +3 to that damage roll by spending a hope. So really, really fantastic. We've got some really good crowd control AoE effects to hit multiple opponents. If we are trying to take down a bigger, heavier opponent, we've got some really solid damage output. And I feel like you're going to be living your best Tempest Domain Cleric life right at level 1. This is going to feel like that character archetype that we've really set out to create right from the get-go. And it's only going to get better from here. So at level 2, we get another experience. So go ahead and maybe add an experience of something that's happened during your past adventures, and that's maybe made you a much better Tempest Domain Cleric. But what's really nice at level 2 is we get increased proficiency. So now we get to add 1 additional damage die when we roll for damage. So for us, with the Warhammer, that's 2d12 plus 3, as well as a 2d8 for our elemental breath. What I'll assume going forward is that you're going to maybe just get the improved version of the weapons that you have. I think that it's realistic to create a baseline of just the improved weapons that we get from level 1 for each tier of play. So at level 2, hopefully you get an improved Warhammer along the way. So an improved Warhammer does do a d12 plus 6, which is a nice damage bump in tier 2. Now for our level up options, I think that we've got to increase our traits. So we're going to increase our instinct, and we're going to increase our strength. And then for our second level up option, I think what we should be doing is increasing our stress, just because that's going to be something that we're going to be using quite a bit going forward. I know right now there's not maybe a ton of options to use stress, but that's going to change. So I want to make sure that we increase that. I would also recommend possibly going HP. If you find that maybe you're taking a little more damage than you'd like, then increase your HP. Those would be the two that I would look at doing as well. Our evasion's 8, so you could increase your evasion, but these are the ones that we're going to be sticking with. Now, at level 2, you have a couple options here. And to stay on point and to be thematic, we are going to be taking Wall Walk. So as you can see here, you can spend a hope to allow a creature you can touch or climb on walls and ceilings as easily as walking on the ground. This lasts until the end of the scene, or you cast Wall Walk again. So the way I would envision this character doing it is very similar to how the Flash runs on walls. It's just that electricity that kind of keeps him grounded and he runs up and down them. I just think that that would be cool to have that ability to just be fighting someone and then jump and start running on the wall and up to the ceiling and dropping down on him with the hammer. You could be doing all sorts of cool stuff like that. Now, one that I think is a very solid runner up, and I didn't take it just because I didn't really feel like reflavoring this ability, but you could definitely take it, is going to be Shadowbind. And if you take a look here, you make a spell cast roll against all adversaries within very close range. Targets you succeed against are temporarily restrained as shadows bind them in place. Now you could just reflavor that to being just like electricity that maybe comes from the ground and binds them, kind of like maybe like Wonder Woman's lasso. That's maybe how I would think of it. But what I think about this, it's really great because restraint is a very difficult condition for the GM to clear. They generally have to spend their spotlight to get rid of it, which I think is a really, really good feature. So really, it's kind of up to you. I think Shadowbind's probably the more powerful option, but thematically, I chose Wall Walk. No regrets. So at level 3, I would look at increasing our traits one more time. And what I would be looking at doing is trying to bump our agility to at least 2. And then as I'm thinking about what maybe we would want to do for the other one, I would maybe either increase your finesse or presence. It's going to be sort of pick your preference. For us, maybe we want to be a little bit stealthy at some point in time and have a +1 to one of those rolls. So we'll just add it to finesse for right now. And for our second level up option at level 3, we are going to be just maxing out that stress slot and taking another one. So we're going to go from 6 to 8 stress slots, which is going to be really nice. we're going to be able to use our abilities quite a bit more. And again, we want to try to get as much stress as possible. Well, options of stress. I don't think anyone's actively wanting stress, at least not in real life. And for our domain card, we are going to be taking flight. So let's take a look at how flight works in Daggerheart. So you make a spellcast roll, have to get a 15. On a success, you place a number of tokens equal to your agility on this card, minimum of 1. When you make an action roll while flying, spend a token from this card. After the action that spends the last token is resolved, you descend to the ground directly below you. And that is why I wanted to have at least a 2/2 agility, because if we are able to take flight, which again is thematic because I'm basically trying to create Thor, we get to you do 2 actions that we can make with flight before we have to descend back to the ground. Whereas if we were to do this in, let's say, just having a 1 or even a negative or a 0, you at least get a 1 when you cast flight. You're doing 1 turn and then you're dropping back to the ground. So if we have the ability to increase agility, I think it's a good idea. And mainly because of the fact that we get to do that bonus flight. And this is also part of the reason why I didn't take full plate armor, because I wanted to maybe use this in certain situations or when I wanted to feel like a badass. Now at level 4, what we're going to want to do is we're just going to want to increase our health by 2. This is going to be nice. This is going to give us 8 health, 8 stress. We're going to be really, really good at being in the front line and taking damage. We've got a pretty solid armor score. And we're going to have really good damage thresholds because your damage thresholds increase every level as well. So for the domain card that we're taking, I think it's no brainer. We are going to be taking Preservation Blast. Let's see what it has to say. You make a spellcast roll against all targets within melee range. Targets you succeed against are forced back to far range and take a d8 plus 3 magic damage using your spellcast trait. This is super cool. This is basically, I would flavor this as you hitting them with a hammer and just like knocking them like way back to Kingdom Come. It just absolutely awesome. And what I like about this is it's a d8 plus 3 and it uses your spellcast trait. So right now our spellcast trait is 3. So you're going to be rolling 3d8 on that, which is awesome. In Daggerheart, there's really 2 ways for you to increase your damage output. Proficiency, usually with like weapons or abilities that increase your proficiency, or spells that usually are increased with your spellcast trait. So in this one, you're just using whatever your spellcast trait is. This is also why, as tempted as I was to maybe go to strength just to try to really focus in on fighting with the hammer, having a high spellcast trait for your class just makes you that much better. So again, I think this is on point, thematic, and really a fantastic level up for us. And it gives us a lot of variability and crowd control. Now, at level 5, we have officially moved into tier 3 of gameplay. So, you get a new experience. So, whatever's happened these maybe last 3 levels since you created your last experience, go ahead and jot something down in your journal or Trapper Keeper. And your proficiency goes up. So now we have a proficiency of 3. So with our hammer, we are doing 3d12 plus 9 now because we are in tier 3 if you happen to get a advanced warhammer, which is great. So at level 5, we are going to be taking a little bit of a detour from our sorcery progression. And I think it's at this point, maybe your warrior feels this divine calling. Maybe there's something that's calling him out to be more than what he is right now, or to search inside for a greater power, or seek out a greater power from above or below, depending on where your character arc's going. But for us, we are going to be multi-classing into Seraph. So Seraph does a couple of things for us. First, let's take a look at their hope feature. You get to spend 3 hope to clear a hit point from any ally within close range. This is basically just like emergency healing, right? Someone's getting close to going down. You've got the hope. Go ahead and burn it. And you are going to be able to heal that ally. Really, really fantastic support ability. But we are here for a few other features that Seraph gives us. And the first is going to be Prayer Dice. So take a look at what Prayer Dice does. I think it's actually probably one of my favorite class features in the game just because it basically just makes you a hope energizer bunny battery, which is never a bad idea. So if you take a look, At the beginning of each session, roll a number of d4s equal to your subclass's spellcast trait and place them on a character sheet in the space provided. These are your prayer dice. You can spend any number of prayer dice to aid yourself or an ally within far range. You can use a spent dice value to reduce incoming damage, add to a roll's result after the roll is made, or gain hope equal to the result. At the end of each section, you clear all unspent prayer die. Okay, so here's what's cool about this. Our spellcast trait right now is 3. And what this means is that we get 3d4 that we get to spend in any one of these ways possible. What that's going to do is that's going to basically give us 7.5, 7 or 8 values of dice to use. And for us, we're going to use those to increase our hope. So this is just going to give us the ability to use our subclass feature more often from Sorcerer to add that +3 damage. We can reroll that magical damage, or we could heal somebody. So getting just 7 hope every session is fantastic. Now, sometimes you might get more, sometimes you might get less, but we're going to go with averages here. But the real reason we are here is going to be for the subclass, which is Divine Wielder. Let's take a look. Now, one thing that's really important, we already have a spellcast trait of Instinct. And when you multi-class in Daggerheart, you can choose to use your existing spellcast trait or a spellcasting trait of the new class. And if you took a class that doesn't have a spellcasting trait, like Warrior, then you would basically have to use whatever the spellcast trait is on whatever you're multi-classing into. So something that's important to know. But for Divine Wielder, what it does is Spirit Weapon. When you have an equipped weapon with a range of melee or very close, which we do, it can fly from your hand to attack an adversary within close range and then return to you. You can mark a stress to target an additional adversary within range with the same attack roll. Okay, that just basically kind of like completes the entire archetype we're trying to do. We can now throw our Warhammer at somebody within close range, and then if we mark another stress, we can attack another ally. So you can just basically throw it and bing it off multiple enemies and have it come back to you. That is absolutely incredible. And it really, if you're fighting multiple enemies, by marking a stress, doubles your damage output just on those single target attacks. Now, again, you can hit 3 or 4 enemies. Maybe you're going to use your elemental breath, which is fine, but this is big for us. Now, the second feature we get, which I think is really important, is Sparing Touch. What it does is once per long rest, you can touch a creature and clear 2 hit points or 2 stress from them. So you are also a creature, so you could touch yourself. I gotta think about rewording that because that does not sound right. You can lay hands on yourself and clear 2 stress or 2 HP. So this just gives us additional resources, right? This is absolutely fantastic. So at this point, you now have your proficiency of 3. So you're doing 3d12 plus 9 if you have an advanced Warhammer. And what you can then do is spend a hope to increase that by 3. Now, when we multi-class into Seraph, we get to pick an additional domain. And the domain that we are going to pick right now is going to be Splendor. Now, Valor has some really, really good options, but for the route that we're taking this character, we're going to be taking the Splendor domain. And you're going to see why in a couple levels. As is custom with every level up, we get to choose a domain card. And we are going to be taking Chain Lightning. Let's take a look. So you get to mark 2 stress to make a spellcast roll, unleashing lightning from all targets within close range. The targets you succeed against will make a reaction roll with a difficulty equal to the result of your spellcast roll. Targets who fail take 2d8 plus 4 magic damage. Additional adversaries not already targeted by chain lightning and within close range of previous targets who took damage must also make a reaction roll. Targets who fail take 2d8 plus 4 magic damage. This chain continues until there are no more adversaries within range. Okay, this is absolutely fantastic. So what you are effectively doing is hitting all targets within close range, which is about 20 to 30 feet, depending on how you're, gauging it. And all of those enemies that you hit and fail their reaction roll, it then spiderwebs that range out to another 20 or 30 feet. And so what you're able to do is hit as many adversaries as you possibly can with this. And this is really, really good because if the map is big and everyone's kind of spread out, you're going to be able to hit as almost every target on the battlefield, depending on how big the battle map is. And that's going to feel awesome when you are just chaining lightning in all different directions. So level 5 is a massive level for us, and we have some really good ways to generate some of the resources that we're going to be using. So at level 6, we get to choose another level up option, and we are going to be increasing our proficiency by 1. So when we select this, we now have a proficiency of 4, which means when we attack with our Warhammer or any ability that uses our proficiency, we now get to roll 4d12. And what I love about this is that now that we are a Divine Wielder Seraph, if we hit a roll really high and there's another enemy within close range, we can just mark a stress and hit that enemy doing the exact same damage. Well, not quite. If you happen to use your subclass feature from the Elementalist and increase your damage by 3, the Divine Wielder feature of hitting the second enemy doesn't apply. At least I don't believe it does. If you disagree with me, go ahead and leave me a comment and we can fight about it on the internet. Just kidding. I'm not going to fight you. You'd lose. As for the domain card we're going to take, we are going to be taking probably my favorite level 3 domain card that we get from the Splendor domain. So some of the reasons why we took Splendor. And it is going to be Second Wind. Take a look. Once per rest, when you succeed on an attack against an adversary, you can clear 3 stress or a hit point. On a success with hope, you can also clear 3 stress or a hit point on an ally within close range to you. So now we have a strike that basically heals us or gives us the option to relieve 3 stress. That's big. And so if you take a look just from what you're able to do with your prayer dice, you're able to get 7 to 8 hope per session, and per rest, you're able to recover at least 3 stress on a successful hit. And if that's a hit with hope, you're recovering 3 stress from your for an ally as well. And because of the other subclass feature that we have from being a Divine Wielder, we can either heal ourselves by 2 or reduce our stress by 2. So we could potentially be reducing our stress by 5. And if we get 1 rest in between combat sessions, as much as 8. So you have the ability to just support your allies and yourself in a way that keeps you in the fight for a very long time. At level 7, when we look at our level up options, I think the thing that we have to do now is increase our traits. I would have liked to have done this sooner, but multi-classing is a little bit of a steep penalty because it takes your entire level up option. Same with increasing your proficiency, but damage is damage. So we are going to increase our traits. And the traits that we're going to be focusing on are going to be, again, instinct as well as strength. Now, for our second option, I would say you can kind of pick your favorites, but for me, I'm going to increase my stress slots. I don't think you can have enough stress slots in Daggerheart because you don't know how long combat's going to be, or if you're in a dungeon crawl and you can't rest or something like that. Having all the resources you need at your disposal is better. I'd rather I have more stress slots and not need them than need them and not have them, because then you're taking HP. Which this is going to feel good. We're going to have 9 stress slots, and that's going to be big with the ability to recover at least 5, if not 8, if we get at least 1 rest. As for our level 7 domain card, I think we should be taking Arcana Touched. I'm not super passionate about this, but I just feel like for us, with what we're trying to do with spellcasting rolls, it makes sense. So let's take a look. When 4 or more of the domain cards in your loadout are from the Arcana domain, you gain the following benefits. A +1 to your spellcast rolls, and once per rest, you can switch the results of your hope and your fear die, which is good because if you succeed with fear, you could just use this to succeed with hope and keep the fun going for the party. And now we have a +1 roll to some of our bigger abilities like Chain Lightning. Moving on to level 8, we are now in the 4th and final tier of gameplay. What's really nice about this is you get an extra experience, so make something up. And you get an increased proficiency. So now where we were sitting at 4 proficiency, we now have 5. So when we hit with the hammer, 5d12 plus, if we are now having a legendary warhammer, which is a tier 4 weapon, that's going to be adding a +12. And then we can spend a hope to add a +3 to that. And if there's another enemy within range, we can mark a stress and hit somebody else, dealing all that damage except for the +3 on the elementalist ability, which is Pretty rad. For our level up options, I think we got to jump right into increasing our proficiency. And this is monstrous for us because now what we have is we have a proficiency going from level 7, 4 to 6. So to put that an actual number on that, you are going to be doing 6d12 worth of damage, which on average is 39 points of damage. If you have a tier 4 Warhammer, that's going to be a plus 12. And then you can add a plus 3 if you choose to spend a hope, making the average damage about 54. And if you mark a stress, you can hit another adversary and drop that by 3, so that would be 51. That is pretty fantastic for only spending a hope and a stress and attacking 2 enemies. Really, really good. And if you happen to be in a situation where you can attack maybe 3 or more enemies, instead of using your Divine Wielder feat, you could just be dropping the instinct weapon that you get from Elemental Breath, which uses your proficiency. So you're doing 68 worth of damage plus 3 if you choose to spend a hope, and that's going to be on average 30 points of damage. And if you can hit more than 3 enemies, that is absolutely incredible. So for the domain card we're going to be taking at level 8, I think the obvious choice is going to be Spell Charge. It's pretty badass, so let's take a look at it. When you take magic damage, place tokens equal to the number of hit points you marked on this card. You can store a number of tokens equal to your spellcast trait. Right now that's 4. When you make a successful attack against a target, you can spend any number of tokens to add a d6 for each token spent to your damage roll. So this is big for us. Because our evasion's low, we're probably going to be taking minor, if not major damage on a pretty regular basis. So what this does is this allows us to basically return to sender. We get hit with a magical attack, we keep storing that up, and we can store up to 4, which if you were to unleash that all in one is like a plus 14 to your attack roll. But it's cool that we have the ability just to maybe add 1 or 2 points of these tokens, so we don't have to blow it all on one attack. We can actually space it out and sort of use it whatever fits the bill. It's also could be a really cool way to basically use your elemental breath where you're basically taking all this damage and then you're just dropping that 68 and then you add this and then maybe spend a hope, and now you're just like putting out a ton of damage to a lot of different enemies. And this just is really on theme for the type of character we want to play, and I absolutely love it. So at level 9, I think what we need to do here is just max out our spellcast trait with instinct and strength. So what we're going to be doing is increasing our instinct to 5 and our strength to 4, giving us a really nice increase to the hits that we're trying to take. And because our spellcast trait has gone up, there's a few different things that we get. One, we now get an extra prayer dice, which is big, and we get the ability to have another arcane charge if we decide to use Unleash Chaos. So you could technically use that ability to unleash 5d10, which is pretty good damage. I think that's nothing to sneeze at for a single target far ranged damage attack. Now, for our second level option, I think what we have to do is we have to upgrade our subclass, but I don't think it's going to be the one you're thinking. So because we multi-class, we actually have 2 options. And the option that we are going to be taking is the upgraded Divine Wielder subclass, that specialization. Let's read about it. Devout. When you roll your player dice, you roll an additional die and discard the lowest result. Additionally, you can use your Sparing Touch feature twice instead of once per long rest. So let's chat about this. This actually now gives us a +1 to our prayer dice. Just with this feature. On average, if you roll an extra dice and discard the lowest, you're going to basically be +1 on average. So with the increased spellcast trait and having this feature, we're going to on average get 13.5 value for our prayer dice, which I just think 13.5 hope that we get to spend in combat or maybe to our allies or on tag team rolls, which is a really effective use of hope. And using the Sparing Touch feature, we now get an additional 2 stress recoveries. So technically, not even counting any short rests that we get, we could do 4 from Sparing Touch and we could have 3 from Second Wind. And if we take a short rest, we could get another 3 from Second Wind and possibly on a success with Hope, give 3 stress back to an ally within close range. Super fantastic. So this is the reason why we took this subclass. I do want to show you what the specialization is for the elemental origin, just so you kind of get an apples to apples comparison. So what you get is called natural evasion. So you can call forth your element to protect you from harm. When an attack roll against you succeeds, you can mark a stress and describe how you use your element to defend you. When you do, roll a d6 and add its results to your evasion against the attack. Okay. So with this, I think that this is a really cool feature. I just don't think it works very well for us. For one, we have a really low evasion. We haven't even increased it at all. Now you might have some better armor that helps out with this, so this might be better if you found something. But really, we're talking about adding a 3.5 to our evasion on average if we mark a stress. That's okay. I would rather just get free stuff and not have to worry about marking more resources. We're better off using that stress to swing our hammer on a different enemy within, close range to us. So pick what you want. If you really want to be thematic and keep this thing going, I don't think there's a wrong choice, but it's probably going to be upgrading the elemental origin if there is. So that's on you. As for our domain card, I think we have to take Earthquake here. Let's take a look. So you make a spellcast roll. Once per rest on a success, all targets within very far range who aren't flying must make a reaction roll, score an 18, and targets who fail take 3d10 plus 8 physical damage and are temporarily vulnerable. Targets who succeed take half damage. Additionally, when you succeed on the spellcast roll, all terrain within very far range becomes difficult to move through, and structures within the range must sustain damage or crumble. So one, if you just take a look at the photo there, it actually just looks like you're just charging electricity to cause the ground to move, which I think is exactly how we'd flavor this. So you're just basically taking your hammer, striking it, and it's like splintering out or like electricity is exploding through and just causing everything to like rumble and fall, which is awesome. But what I like about this is that this has a lot of really good, one, debuffs. Anyone who fails is not only taking damage, but they're also vulnerable, which is going to help your party out quite a bit. The other thing I like is it creates that difficult terrain, which makes it more difficult for them to move. So they're going to have to make agility checks to get to maybe some of your squishier party members, which is also nice because we still have the ability to fly. So if we need to, probably in your loadout, you could swap to and fly around and make a couple attacks without having to make those agility rolls. And I think that's cool. So really, really thematic, good damage, good AoE, good debuff. I think this is a really solid spell. Level 10. This is going to be a massive power spike for us in a couple different ways. And I'm going to show you exactly what I'm talking about. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to increase our stress by 1 because we're going to need it. We're going to increase our stress slots. So now we have a total of 10 stress slots, which is great, and a boatload of ways to recover them thanks to the Seraph multiclass that we did. So for the second feature that we're going to have, we are going to be taking an additional domain card at a lower level. And now that we are level 10, we can now take level 5 Splendor cards. And this is important. So when you multi-class, you can only take a card from half your level rounded down. Right? So at level 10 is when you get access to level 5 cards for the first time. And we are going to be taking Smite. So let's take a look at this. So once per rest, you spend 3 hope to charge your powerful Smite. When you next successfully attack with a weapon, double the result of your damage roll. This attack deals magic damage regardless of the weapon's damage type. That last little line there is the most important part. Your Warhammer, when you use Smite, now becomes magic damage. Guess what you now get to use if you use this attack? You get to use Volatile Magic, which you spend 3 hope and you get to re-roll any number of damage dice from an attack that deals magic damage. Well, guess what? You are dealing magic damage now, so you get to re-roll those d12s. So let me write this down for you. If you roll 6d6, you are on average doing 51 points of damage, okay? Which is nothing to sneeze at. If we are just targeting 5s or lower for rerolls, that jumps up to 59.7 worth of damage, okay? So you're talking almost a 9 increase in damage, which doesn't maybe sound like a lot. But when we factor in Smite, now we are going to be doubling that damage die. We are going from 51 points of damage to 119.4 when you use Smite. That is absolutely bonkers. Now, keep in mind, this is going to cost you 6 hope to use, and you probably don't even need to. It's a little overkill, and the question I would maybe ask myself is, do we even need to use this? And the answer is no, but it's really badass. And I think you should just do it once and let people's jaw hit the floor, because this is a really solid damage output for a single target. I think you're probably going to be way over there. Well, you will be over any tier 4 enemies severe damage threshold, but it's really, really cool. And then you could, if you wanted to, burn that smite card and get some hope back from your sorcery class feature. With our penultimate attack done at level 10, we are now going to move to the ultimate attack. So if you thought that was bonkers, you just better buckle up, because it's about to get crazy. So the ability card that we're going to be taking is Falling Sky. Let's take a look at it. You make a spellcast roll against all adversaries within far range. Mark any number of stress to make shards of arcana rain down from above. Targets you succeed against take 1d20 plus 2 magic damage for each stress marked. So let's take a look at this. If we were to try to go all out, one, you're hitting all adversaries within range of this attack, which is big. So if you get a really good spellcast roll, so let's say you roll like a 23 or 24, you're most likely hitting everybody on the map with that roll. So here's what's cool. We could mark, if we had full stress, up to 10 stress in order to use this. So let's break down the math that would mean for these adversaries. So if we were to use the volatile magic feature that allows to re-roll any number of magic damage that we do by spending 3 hope, we would be able to, and let's just say we re-rolled 8s on these d20s, right? What would happen is that would make our average damage from 10.5 to 12.9. And that's basically a 2.4 damage increase, but it's per stress marked. So because we're marking 10 stress, that's basically going to be doing 129 points of damage, plus another 20 from the plus 2 that we get for each stress marked. So you're doing 149 damage to all adversaries in this area. That is absolutely bonkers. And again, you should probably just do this once just to let everyone's jaw drop at a table, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. Way overkill for what you're fighting in tier 4 gameplay. Now, what's really nice though is if you did decide to do this, because you are a Seraph, you have 4 stress that you could recover right from the get-go, and if you succeeded on this melee attack, you could then do another 3, so you could recover 7 stress of the 10 you spend on this and be in good shape to go. Do I think you should do this? No. But the fact is you can do this. And it might even be more sustainable just to drop 3 or 4 stress to make sure you're hitting severe damage on everybody. But I think that this is a fantastic ability. And these 2 techniques make you a very solid powerhouse against multiple enemies or single targets. And that wraps it up for the Tempest Domain Cleric. I really felt like we really hit the nail on the head with this build. I love the fact that Daggerheart allows us to build the characters we want to play. We just have to think about it a little bit differently. Someone actually made a comment on Reddit about how he didn't think character build videos had a space in Daggerheart due to its narrative focus. And I don't necessarily think that he's wrong, but I also don't think he's right, because there is going to be a lot of people that come over from other tabletop RPGs such as D&D and Pathfinder, and because a specific character archetype isn't specifically stated, like an Arcane Archer or an Eldritch Knight, like the 2 videos that we've done before. I'll put them right there so you can take a look at them. But what's nice about it is that you can still build this thing with very mild tweaks. We don't have to homebrew new subclasses. We don't have to homebrew all this stuff. We can take the existing core material that's given and make the subclasses that we want. And we don't necessarily have to, again, go off and spend hours creating something that doesn't need to be there. So if you've played a sorcerer or have played something similar to a Tempest Domain Cleric, I would love to hear your comments below. And if you like these videos and it's something that you have been enjoying, please do me a favor and subscribe to the channel, because that really helps. Also, let me know if there's a specific archetype or character class that you want to see built, and I will do my best to build it. Just leave me a comment down below, and I will add it to the bank of character builds that I'm doing. And until next time, my hope is that you roll with hope.